We're going to continue here with PitchCon with David Mendelson, Chris Weber, and Sam Lutz. Hey guys, how you doing?
What's up, Nick?
Hi,
It's good to see you. Sam Lutz, you're back a second time. Good to see you again. Hopefully you've really taken in the team that you drafted. I guess it was last night or 2 nights ago on Wednesday evening. It all just blends together for me now. But I'm going to get out of your hair. Thanks so much for being a part of this panel, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, Nick, before you go, first of all,
yeah.
I'm appalled that a curse was said on PitchCon.
Where was this?
That it wasn't me. Secondly,
it was the jackpot.
How could
all right?
you?
He was talking about his donkey. He was talking about his donkey that's in the jackpot. Get out of
here. Well, what a way to start. Well, welcome in for those that are just tuning into PitchCon. This is going to be a very fun panel. I'm joined by 2 very handsome and knowledgeable gentlemen. Before we get into the topic of what we're going to be talking about today, just a reminder, I know many are familiar with what is going on, but please, if you guys can donate, PitchCon is all about donating, and this cause is for ALS, and 100% of the proceeds will go to ALS to fight ALS, find the cure for ALS, and over $5,000 have been raised. So if you want to donate, please go to pitcherlist.com/PitchCon, and you'll be able to make any size donation you can afford. All goes to a great cause. Again, 100% of the proceeds go to fight ALS. Today, we are talking ADP. We're talking hitter debates. It's going to be a fun show. And before we get started into that, of course, my 2 co-hosts here are going to be providing a ton of knowledge and great content for you guys. The man to my right, you know him if you're familiar with Pitcher List. Of course, he also co-hosts the very popular podcast In the Deep, and he's a Mets fan, which you could say is unfortunate. You could also say it's fortunate if you're an optimist and what they could do this year. He's an all-around good guy and one of the best in the biz. It is Chris Weber. What's up, man?
Hey, Dick. Good to be here. Good to be here with you. This is my second time doing something with you in the last month or so. It's good. I'm being spoiled. But yeah,
I was gonna say me, but either way, yeah.
The podcast for Pitch List is In the Deep. We do deep and sort of dynasty focused hitters, pitchers, everything. Anything like 250 ADP and later. So if you're in that kind of league, AL only, NL only, go check it out. It's In the Deep.
It's a great podcast. One of the best ones on the Pitcher List podcast network. They're all great, but I'm definitely biased to my friend Schwebzy here, who's again a great guy. As also the guy below me who's quoted as saying he dominated the mock draft on Pitcher List on Wednesday, maybe only because I wasn't in there, but he seems very knowledgeable, and I'm very pumped to be talking with my man Sam Lutz today. What's up, man?
Oh, thanks. I'm happy to be here. I think that's a quote from Nick about me dominating on Wednesday. That was a great time. That was my first mock draft with Pitcher List. I've only been here for a year, so this will be my second year. I'm excited to get into it. I've mostly written about pitchers so far, and I am a Pirate fan, so I'm a little worse off than Chris. I will trade owners with you whenever you're up for it.
I love it. Well, gentlemen, we're going to need all the brains. So, Sam, we're going to need that drafting brain that you just demonstrated in your mock draft. And Schwebzy, I know you always got fantasy baseball on the mind to talk about these hitter battles in terms of ADP. And before we get into the actual battles themselves, I think it would be good to paint a picture about how you like to attack hitters in drafts, just like your overall strategy, because it's year to year, it's different. And this year, I feel like more than any, hitters have been pushed up like crazy and pitchers have been getting pushed down. So Schwebzy, I'll go to you first. When selecting hitters this year early in drafts, do you like going for power? Do you like going for stolen bases? Or do you have a different type of strategy where you like to go early on?
We're kind of in a fun place right now with the league environment. We don't know if it there could be this year a stolen base spike. There could be a huge stolen base spike. We're not really sure how the new rules are going to impact things yet. And as for power, I talked about this a couple months ago on the podcast, where every previous time in Rob Manfred's reign as the commissioner, every time that there's been a big drop in home runs, the next year there was a huge spike. I don't think we're going to see that this time, though. But it's happened historically every time so far. So we don't know if there's going to be like a big power spike like 2021 or 2019. We don't know if there's going to be a big stolen base spike because of the rules. Honestly, I'm kind of just drafting like what's on the paper. I'm just kind of sticking with my projections, sticking with what I know. I am simply not smart enough to try to guess what the league is going to be like now. So I mean, it's the same as it's always been. We got your 5-tool studs are the guys that you need to go after, and after that it's all needs based. I'm not shoving any speed threats or big power guys up my board too much. Although I will say, if I have to choose between the two this year, I am going power because of last year's depressed home run environment. So if it does just maintain, I want to lock down that power this year.
And the fact that the new rule change with the bigger bags and the limited pickoff attempts, stolen bases should potentially be going up in a major way this year. So I definitely can see why power would be more of a premium. Power went down, like you said, in a major way from the year before. Sam, what about you? How do you like to attack your hitters early?
I agree with everything Chris said. I mean, we just saw the last mock that we did on Tuesday here. You had a ton of great pitchers left in the middle and the late rounds. A lot of guys with ERAs in the low 3s or 3.5s have been pushed back to the bottom third of the draft at this point. And I'd expect an uptick in stolen bases, but I don't know if that's going to be league-wide or if it's going to be focused on a few guys who already steal bases, and now it's just going to come easy to them. But the limited pickoff attempts is going to be really interesting. You see a lot of guys after 3 pickoff attempts or after 2 pickoff attempts are just going to go.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest question marks we've ever had in fantasy baseball with a rule change that drastic, just to what the impact is going to be for what was a very premium statistic in terms of the amount of stolen bases we get every single year and the amount of guys that get pushed up. If that becomes something that's a little bit easier to find, those guys are going to be losing a ton of value, and it's not something that you're going to be panicking for early on. But on the flip side of the coin here, what about some good stats to get for late? What are some of the statistics you're like, hey, there's so much value here later on? Like there are some power guys at the bottom that are, low batting averages that are good, or stolen bases won't be as big a deal this year. So I can get a John Birdie, after pick 200. Is there, Sam, of certain statistic that you feel like you can wait on a lot this year and you're not too worried about it?
It might be batting average. I think stolen bases are a good idea. I don't think Birdie was even drafted in the mock that we did the other day. But a lot of guys like Arias, Jeff McNeil, the guys who have higher averages but don't contribute much in the way of stolen bases or home runs, I think are going to drop off because guys that are hitting less than 10 home runs or stealing less than 10 bases could fall way behind the pack and become bigger drags in those categories than they were last year.
Yeah, I think it's a great call. Luis Ariz is the batting average king, but doesn't give you much else. And Jeff McNeil just got a new deal. So he also is a great source of batting average and will be in the Mets lineup for the foreseeable future there. Schwebzy, anything different, or do you agree with Sam?
Yeah, I don't want to. It really is. It's been like this for a while with stolen bases. Like I do not want to be stolen base deficient late in a draft because. Like we actually got a mailbag question, which I'm going to be talking about right after this. I'm going to be recording this week's episode of In the Deep. So one of the mailbag questions we got was, who do I draft late for steals? And they gave me Leody Taveras, John Birdie, and it was one other guy that I'm forgetting.
Bubba Thompson, maybe.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Maybe it might have been like a Siri or something. I don't know, but. I started looking like past like 300, like who the stolen base threats were, and I was just like, this is a bummer. It's like those 3 guys, and there's like not much else that I would want to draft personally that aren't complete black holes elsewhere. So it's definitely not stolen bases. It was a good call with the batting average, but yeah, I would much rather be trying to hunt a power threat than a stolen base threat that late in the draft.
Was it Drew Waters?
Yes, that was the one.
Help in the comment section for that one. But yeah, so it sounds like stolen bases and batting average are the best things you can look for later on in terms of if you're missing out of position, or I'm sorry, batting average being a big deal at that case. But I think one of the biggest things I've been hearing this year is just how thin some of the positions get and how important it is that you lock up some of these positions early on, because there's a huge drop off in talent when you get from the elite tiers to just the average guys. So Schwebzy, there's a couple different ways you could go here, but what in your mind is the most premium position that gets really thin that you need to grab early in your drafts?
So it's kind of counterintuitive because there's so many good players at this position, but I would say shortstop, because I know it's like not the most common answer, but there are a lot of good shortstops, yes, but they get drafted early. They all get drafted early, and there is a cliff. So you want to make sure that you get in on that cliff. So even if you're waiting on shortstop, you want to get one in the first, I don't know, 7 or 8 rounds before that cliff hits. There are more standard answers like third base, but I do feel like there's more late round third base targets that I like than there are late round shortstop targets.
Do you know where your cliff starts for the shortstop position, just for those that might be curious of where you feel there's a big tier break here?
I don't have it in front of me, but I can pull it up.
So I'll go Trey Turner, Bobby Witt, Fernando Tatis, Bo Bichette, Francisco Lindor, Corey Seager, O'Neill Cruz, Tommy Edman, Dansby Swanson, Wander Franco, Xander Bogaerts, Tim Anderson. Are we still in that like comfortable tier?
So
are we...
It's right around like the 14, 15. So we're at pick 120. Like the Carlos Correa is like the last shortstop that I'm okay with.
Okay. So after the 15.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But
I mean, I agree with you.
After that, there's just no shortstops I like.
Yeah. I mean, once you get past Correa, Ahmed Rosario, Nico Horner, Javi Baez, Tyro Estrada, and Adalberto Mondesi, it's a very big difference. So I can see exactly where you're coming from with that. Sam, what about you, man? What position do you find yourself trying to grab early so you don't have to scramble later on?
It's got to be second base. I do agree that shortstop really thins out at the end, and there's a good reason why Turner is still the number 1 average draft pick right now, even though it's generally considered a deeper position than a couple of the other infield positions. But after the top 2 or 3 second basemen, it gets really bad really fast. So if you're not getting one of those guys, you're probably sitting 10 rounds before you even go look at one again. And third base is kind of similar to shortstop, where it's a little bit top heavy. You've probably got 6, maybe 7 guys that you're going to be happy to have. And after that, you're really crossing your fingers, and you're probably going to be looking at similar talent on the waiver wire for the rest of the year.
If it doesn't paint a picture that you go Alex Bregman at 7, and then you go to Gunnar Henderson at 8, who has very, very limited major league experience and a very hyped up prospect, but very little major league experience. That just tells you all you need to know about third base and just the proven guys at the top to once you get down to less certainties once you get past the top 7 here. But yeah, I agree with you guys. I think those are definitely tough positions, and that's why pitching has been getting pushed down as much as it has, because you guys want to get these elite players at these positions so you don't have to worry about it later.
And some of those guys like Bobby Witt has dual eligibility, so he's only counting for one of those, and that's pulling away from the other position too.
That's right. And I mean, some people might even say that Bobby Witt is unproven and aren't comfortable with his draft cost right now at right around pick 9. So
to your point about the second baseman, I'm in the middle of a startup dynasty draft right now with a bunch of pitcherless people. And first of all, it's miserable. I hate drafting with pitcherless people because so many of us like the same people and are on the same targets, and it's awful. But I picked at the 4 spot, and I picked in the 3rd round. And then by the time it got back to me in the 4th round, 5 second basemen were taken, and it was all of the good second basemen. And it was just like, well, there goes that position for this draft. So I feel you there.
Yeah, it is definitely very tough in these draft streets these days, but we're going to help alleviate some of the problems that you're experiencing in your drafts and giving you the tough choices you're deciding between. We're going to tell you which one you should be going with. So we looked, all 3 of us, at some of the tough ADP battles between these hitters that are going near each other, where you're going to have to make a decision of which one of these guys you should take. So we're going to go by ascending order of ADP. And let's go to our first battle. And I wish I could hooked up my soundboard to where it has like the Yu-Gi-Oh! It's time to duel, because we are going to have these guys dueling it out right now. And the first one's going to be outfield focused. Cedric Mullins, and somewhere Justin Mason put his head to his ear because he heard the name Cedric Mullins. Cedric Mullins versus Adolis Garcia. Cedric Mullins is going at pick 49, and Adolis Garcia is going around pick 57. So going very close to each other here. Sam, out of these two players, who would you draft more of? Consider Cedric Mullins, back-to-back seasons of stealing 30-plus bags, has demonstrated he had power with 30 home runs last year, or 2 years ago, 16 last year. So the power came down a little bit. On the flip side, Adolis Garcia has had 27 or more homers in back-to-back years, 90 or more RBIs in back-to-back years, and has also stolen 16 or more bases in back-to-back years, saying, I'm not a fraud. So who are we going with?
I ended up on Adolis Garcia on this one, and I had to go back and change my own personal rankings after looking into this a little bit more because I did have Mullins ahead of him. But Mullins really comes in. He's a better stolen base threat, a better speed guy, but that's it. Adolis is consistently better on the other 4 scoring categories in a normal 12-by-12 mixed league. I was a little bit down on him because a lot of leagues I play in are OPS leagues, and he doesn't walk very much, and that hurts his OPS a little bit. But Baltimore's it's an absolutely gargantuan stadium at this point. Texas, I think, also provides a little bit better lineup because you still have Semien and Corey Seager sitting at the top there. Nate Lowe is an excellent on-base guy as well. So those RBI numbers, he drove in more than 100 runs last year. I think that's legitimate. I think it's consistent. He could do something like that again. So you're talking, you could have 40 more RBI from Adolis than you have from Mullins. You could have double-digit home runs. Runs are probably going to be similar. Average isn't going to be too far off. They were really close last year, 250 to 258. You might be giving up around 10 stolen bases, but like we said, that might be not as big of a deal this year. You might be able to find more stolen bases than you have in years past. And while Mullins is generally a more patient hitter, if you look at some of his more advanced metrics, Adolis just makes better contact across the board.
Yeah, I think even for people like myself who were skeptical going into last season that he could repeat it, he proved all the doubters wrong and looks like he's the real deal. And one of the better players for power and stolen bases in baseball right now. Schwebzy, are you going to go with the Adolis, or are you flipping it and going Cedric Mullins here?
Well, that's me. You're talking about the person who was down on Garcia repeating, because with his plate discipline, I just didn't think it was possible. But I mean, there are always outliers. Like Javi Baez did it for years. Sometimes you just impact the ball so well that it doesn't matter that you swing and miss a lot. At least, from a fantasy perspective, even if he doesn't have like the greatest OBP. If you're in an OBP league, he gets downgraded, obviously. But yeah, I this is kind of if I go Mullins here, I kind of have to go back on the thing I just said a second ago about the even guy and going with the power. So yeah, I'm Garcia here because I do want to focus on power over speed in the early rounds, and I don't totally believe that Mullins is going to get that power back that he displayed in the previous year. Like, it's funny because when Camden changed their ballpark dimensions, we all knew like that's going to be death to the power of righties in there. And we saw that with Mountcastle, and we were like, yeah, it's fine. Mullins is going to be fine. He's a lefty. He only hits the right field. But then his power cratered too, even though he pulls all his home runs. But that seems like it's just more a function of him not impacting the ball as well as he did previously. Will he fix that? I don't want to bet on it. I'd rather go with Adolis, who I think is a more consistent power threat and still will get you those stolen bases.
Yeah, 16. I'm actually more concerned about his average drop-off than the power drop-off, because you're not necessarily looking for Mullins to be a home run hitter for you. But if he's hitting under 260, he kind of becomes a 2-category guy, not even a 3-category guy. And that's not much for, late 4th round, early 5th round pick.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I mean, it's pretty much a clean sweep for Adolis Garcia. So if you're deciding between those two players right now, I think we're very much on the Adolis Garcia side there. I don't know if we'll be the same for this next one. Maybe we will. This was one I really liked looking at. Jose Abreu going at pick 86 versus Vinny Pasquantino going around pick 89. This was not the case all offseason, as even just as recently as about a month and a half ago, Jose Abreu was going about 15 picks after Vinny Pasquantino. But I think the public has caught up with the value that he was, and now he's more fairly priced. I think I'm Jose Abreu just because you're looking at a guy that's second in all of baseball with 863 RBIs since his first year in the big league since 2014. He hit 304 last year, and over the final 3 quarters of the season, batted 335. Has averaged 650 plate appearances per year over 162 games in his career. And it just really I mean, everything in the data just says that you can't buy into what we saw last year from Jose Abreu, even in the power department, with the White Sox emphasizing contact over power last year, and the leader on home runs being Andrew Vaughn with 17 among the entire team. I think he's in for a major bounce back with this Houston Astros lineup. I think he's the easy one for me. But Sam, what about you? Are you the older gentleman or the young gun?
I know, I agree entirely, and I love Vinny. I'm big on Vinny. I think he could be a top 5 first baseman for a long time at this point. But Abreu has just been so consistently good throughout his career. He's almost always hits around or over 300. He ended the season incredibly strong last year, and now he's sitting in a lineup with Jose Altuve, Jordan Alvarez, and Kyle Tucker. I mean, in Chicago last year, they barely had Eloy Jimenez. They barely had Lou Bob. They barely had Tim Anderson because of the injuries. And now he's sitting with 3 guys who are going to be picked in the first, 2-3 rounds of most fantasy drafts here. There's a lot of offense in Houston right now.
Yeah. I mean, he's just going to fit right in with that team. He's going to be pesky for everybody that plays him. He's going to make a ton of contact, and he's going to have a monster year, I think. But Schwebzy, clean sweep for Abreu, or are you going the Italian breakfast here?
So if there is any sort of keeper component, I'm going Vinny. But for redraft, yeah, Jose Abreu. And it all comes down to that new context. If you're drafting in October, this might be a toss-up still. But now that we know that he's going to be in Houston with that lineup in that ballpark, I'm going with the old timer. So 35 players in baseball last year came to the plate with at least 380 runners on base. All 3 of them were Astros. It's a very top-heavy lineup, but the top of that lineup is awesome. And RBIs are purely a context stat. You have to drive the runners in, but you also have to have them on base first. And there are very few contexts in baseball better for that than the Houston Astros lineup. You can still get all of those opportunities on a lesser team with a worse offensive lineup. Bobby Witt had 360 I think base runners on for him last year. So Pasquantino can still approach 400 if he's hitting in the middle of the lineup every day. But the difference between, for example, 400 and the leader, who was Pete Alonso, is 100 base runners, 100 more opportunities to knock someone in. And it's easy to go it's easy to kind of ignore the difference between 90 RBIs and 110, but that's a big difference. That's a huge difference. I was looking at Razzball's player rater before, and Pete Alonso's RBI total, and this is a really dirty way to look at things, but his RBIs were worth $14 on their player rater, which was the same as the entirety of Rowdy Tellez.
Oh wow!
I'm sure the Razzball people are screaming at the way I'm using their player rater right now, but the context is really important. And not for nothing, playing in Minute Maid Park with the Crawford boxes in left field, he can't help but run into a few cheapy home runs there. The expected home runs on Baseball Savant, they have him at 22 for last year when he was only at 15 actual home runs. So it should be big for him, that the whole new context.
Combine that with a 16% strikeout rate, and you got a recipe for I was going to try to make a dessert analogy, but one didn't come to me. But it's going to be a tasty treat for anybody that has him in fantasy this year, that's for sure. Next one. This one we don't get to see too often. We see the replacement and the replacee in Houston, where we have Jeremy Pena going around pick 109 and Carlos Correa going around pick 110. So for those that don't know, Jeremy Pena was the one that eventually replaced Carlos Correa at shortstop in Houston and had big shoes to fill, and more than admirably filled those shoes, especially in the playoffs last season. You look at his 2022 line of 22 homers and 63 RBIs, 11 steals, and a 253 batting average. It's pretty good. But he also really dominated in the playoffs to the point where he won the World Series MVP and just looked like he was going to be a cornerstone for that franchise going forward, especially with his age considered. Meanwhile, you have Carlos Correa, who's only 28 years old, but feels like he's 38 with talk of how bad his leg is. And believe it or not, he's actually played in 136 or more games in back-to-back seasons. 22 home runs are underwhelming for him, but a 291 batting average, 64 RBIs with a decent Twins hitting lineup here. So let's go to you first, Schwebzy. You've got the Jeremy Pena and you've got Carlos Correa going back-to-back as the 14th and 15th shortstop. Which one would you choose?
This is a fun one because I think Carlos Correa is a significantly better hitter, but Jeremy Pena is like winds up being like the same because of fantasy stuff. Like those stolen bases just make up so much of a gap there, and Correa is just not running at all. But I think Correa is a significantly better player in real life, but in fantasy they wind up kind of the same. Like they literally like home runs, RBI, same number of home runs last year. The runs plus RBI, there was a 1 RBI difference. Like they put up really similar lines, but Correa hit 291, Pena hit 253. That's a big difference. And I don't think Pena is going to make up too much of that ground unless we see some kind of marked difference in his plate discipline. You're going to see a trend here. And if you've been listening to me for any length of time, you know this. I do not like players with bad plate discipline, like generally. So I'm generally going to side with the guy with better plate discipline if other things are equal. Unless I'm desperate for stolen bases, I'm going Correa here every time.
And I saw a comment that said you're not worried about his health issues at all with the leg. I feel like for this season, I'm not. It'd be more for the 6th year of his contract that I would be.
As a Mets fan, for my personal well-being and mental health, I cannot talk about Carlos Correa's ankle.
You guys dodged a bullet, and then I'm a big Twins fan, so we took that on. We didn't care. You just basically just passed his medicals and everything. Didn't worry us at all. But Sam, what about you? Are you going Jeremy Pena, or are you also going to side on the Carlos Correa side?
No, I'm going to side on the Correa side for all the same reasons. Unless you have entirely punted on stolen bases at this point and are trying to get back into it, and then there's probably places you can get more stolen bases than Pena. But there's a lot on his StatCast page that is unappealing. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's right around the bottom third in hard hit percentage and average exit velocity, and he strikes out a ton, and he doesn't walk pretty much at all. So this is a guy who could see extended slumps if that's the case, if he's not making good contact and he's not drawing free passes. I get that it's a great lineup, but it's the Twins don't by any means have a bottom third lineup. I think that they're still going to be in the middle of the pack, if not in the top 10 offensive teams again. I'm a little worried that Pena could have a big drop-off from his rookie season, have a little bit of a sophomore slump. And you talk about injuries. They played the same number of games last year and had almost identical at-bats. There's one difference in their at-bats, 521 to 522.
It's pretty crazy how close they are in every single way. It's eerie. But I think you guys are right on the money. I think Correa, unless you really need steals, like you said, Sam, he seems like the safer player at this point. And Correa is the 15th shortstop on the board. Just feels like robbery, to be honest with you guys. Like I feel like almost everybody's going to want to wait just to grab him.
Yeah, I can see that after the top few go, and I don't know how people feel about Tatis right now. I know he went in the first round of the mock draft, but I don't think that that's going to be common. I think that if you don't get one of the top 3, waiting for a guy like Correa is perfectly fine. And if you miss him, Pena is going to be right there at the same pick.
That's right.
So one thing to keep in mind with Pena, what made me start looking into like the amount of runners that people came to the plate with, the amount of runners on base, is because someone in that Dynasty League draft that I mentioned earlier was talking about like their shock at how few RBI Jose Altuve had. And I was like, well, he's a leadoff hitter, and the bottom of the Astros lineup is terrible. And keeping that in mind, if Pena's hitting, 6th, 7th, he's going to have plenty of RBI opportunities. He's not going to get knocked in much because if, their lineup is really, really good, but it only goes like, 6, 7 deep.
Yeah, it does. I'm interested to see where Pena settles in on that batting order too. We know Correa will be in the top half of the Twins lineup for sure, but the Astros lineup is so stacked. I wouldn't be shocked to see Pena hitting 6th or 7th, which could definitely hurt his counting stat opportunities as well.
Yeah, that's what I would expect, bottom third of that lineup.
Yeah, so I think we're on the Carlos Correa. So we're 3 for 3, gentlemen, in these first 3. But we have our first cage match where we have 4 players come in and only 1 can come out here. We have Taylor Ward going pick 113, Stephen Kwan going at 114, Nick Castellanos at 120, and Jake McCarthy's at 118. So out of these 4 players, very different skill sets. Some provide better batting average, others some stolen bases, others maybe some more upside in power, and maybe one of these is an all-around player. But I've seen across Twitter a lot of people taking stamps on each one of these guys in different ways in terms of expecting an even better year this coming year, whether it's a better tail end of last year, the consistency they showed. There's a lot of different ways you can go here. So, Sam, let's go to you. Who in this group do you think, obviously, I know building a team context, if you need stolen bases, you might go this guy, or batting average this guy, but clean slate, who would you think you would draft the most of?
Taylor Ward, and it's actually not as close as I thought it was going to be coming into this group. Jake McCarthy has an ice cold StatCast page. Guy makes terrible contact. He's really, really fast. But you're talking about someone who did hit 283, but that's only over 320 at bats, so it's not much of a major league track record already. Stole 23 bases, so if that's what I need when it comes to this point in the draft, he's a guy that I'm going to be targeting. But there could be an absolutely huge drop-off at this point. Meanwhile, Taylor Ward is just kind of good at everything. I mean, he's top third in average exit velocity, top third in hard hit percentage, draws plenty of walks in the basically top 20% of that. He is fast, top 20% in sprint speed also, top 10% in chase rate. He is a complete player, and he's going to be sitting in the same lineup as Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, and maybe a healthy Anthony Rendon. So I think you could have more counting stats than you're probably going to get with any of these guys, especially if Castellanos doesn't bounce back to what he looked like in Cincinnati. And McCarthy is probably the most exciting of the other group because he's young, because he steals bases. Quan just doesn't offer that much other than a good average, a lack of strikeouts, and a lot of runs scored. But I think Taylor Ward is just across the board. He could be a 4, maybe even chip in close to double-digit steals kind of guy.
People were talking about how strong he finished the year. Obviously, he had an amazing beginning of the season. MLB Network actually has him ranked as the number 4 left fielder in all of baseball, only behind Yordan Alvarez, Juan Soto, and Kyle Schwarber. So they're very high on him too. And I think many people are expecting him to continue to what he showed towards the end of last season, where he really looked like he kind of got out of that midseason slump. Schwebzy, what about you? Are you going to ride with the Taylor Ward side, or is there one of the other 3 you really like?
So I think this comes down to Ward or Castellanos. It's just a matter. So Castellanos was good for like the better part of a decade, like really good hitter. And then last year he was inexplicably terrible for no reason that maybe I just missed it. Like, was there like a major injury or something that you guys heard of? Like, wasn't it
for
just
Taylor Ward?
A mysterious? No, for Castellanos.
No, and if you look at the Castellanos, just compared to 21, he looks like he's a completely different guy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's like he just stopped doing everything that made him good. And, so the question is, do you trust more in the late career breakout, or do you trust more in the bounce back? Now, maybe I'm falling a victim to recency bias here, but for me, it's more like, what have you done for me lately? And that's Taylor Ward was the best player of this group last year. I think Quan may have been better than him as far as like player rater stuff goes, but I prefer the all-round production as opposed to just being really good in a couple categories like Steven Kwan. So give me Taylor Ward of this group with the caveat that Kwan is a pretty close second for me here because I don't really trust in the Castellanos bounce back. McCarthy is like a far and away last place for me here because not only does he have the iffiest career profile, I'll say, because last year Castellanos was really rough at the plate, just as rough as McCarthy was, but McCarthy has the most playing time risk here. Ward, Quan, and Castellanos, I feel like have pretty solid spots in those lineups. I don't think they're going anywhere. Whereas McCarthy, if he has a bad month, Kyle Lewis is sitting there on the bench ready to rock.
Mm-hmm. And they have a lot of young players coming up too.
Mm-hmm. That organization is just flush with outfielders.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of touched on the Taylor Ward side of things. 10 homers in April and May combined. Then he got the neck injury when he slammed into the wall and really struggled in the summer months. But then August and September hit another 10 home runs, also had 28 RBIs over that time, was walking at a pretty decent clip. I do think Taylor Ward is the most interesting out of this group in terms of his upside being greater. I think Stephen Kwan kind of maximized his talent. Jake McCarthy seems like a better stolen base threat than an actual full-time major leaguer, at least at this point to me. And Nick Castellanos is just a mystery box at this point because we don't know which Nick Castellanos we're going to get. So I think Taylor Ward feels like the one here, and he's getting a lot of helium too because I've seen his name popped up everywhere too. So Taylor Ward is definitely, I think, again, all in agreement, him being the top option here, as it also says with his ADP. But this next one here, Andrew Vaughn versus Jose Miranda, both give you multi-position flexibility here, and both have very intriguing profiles. So I know who I like a little bit more, but Schwebzy, I'm going to go to you first. Andrew Vaughn having an ADP of 133, Jose Miranda having an ADP of 145. Which of these two would you rather have?
It's Vaughn for me. Miranda worries me a little bit because I was digging into his pitch type data, and like an overview makes it look good. He hits fast. He does pretty well on fastballs, does fine on breaking balls, does fine on off-speed pitches. But then you look like breaking that down, he was bad against fastballs and bad against sliders, the two most common pitch types by far right now. And then four seamers and sliders, and then like he demolished sinkers, and that's weird to get all of your power from hitting sinkers. Like I don't think that's a particularly common result for hitters. So it worries me that he's not doing anything against the most common pitch types. I don't know how. Like I see all the time looking at players like wildly different pitch type results from year to year. So I don't think this is a particularly sticky thing, but it's something concerning for me. And I think these players are close enough that that weirdness for me puts Vaughn over the top. Like Vaughn is a good hitter right now, and not that Miranda isn't, but I think Vaughn is like a small development away, like an approach, a change away from being a monster. Like for someone who swings as infrequently as he does, and is as good at making contact as he is, he just doesn't walk enough. Like it's a weird mix of inputs to get that output. It feels like something that an approach change or better coaching can fix. And my hope is that a more settled environment in Chicago this year without La Russa will make things better for him.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we talked about the different approach with the new manager. Hopefully, they'll be a little bit allowed more to swing, not just to contact, but for power. He'll be able to stick at one position, which is also going to be a huge deal. Should be entrenched at first base now with Jose Abreu gone, so he won't have to kind of slide back and forth between positions. So there is a chance for a bounce back here in a big way for Andrew Vaughn. Sam, what about you, Andrew Vaughn or Jose Miranda?
I hate to do it, but I'm going to agree again. And I think the La Russa factor, it's kind of tough to overestimate. A friend and I used to use his name as kind of like a curse every day when we'd look to see if Vaughn was in the lineup or not, because too often
La Russa.
Exactly. I mean, it's exactly the way we felt. What is that guy doing? Why did they hire La Russa? Why didn't they fire him after the DUI? But I do think that a slight change of approach to Vaughn could unlock almost superstardom. Because you're right. The K rate's fantastic, top 25% of the league. Whiff rate's right there, same thing. But the walk rate's down in the bottom fifth, which seems weird. He does have a kind of bad chase rate, so he might be swinging at too many outside pitches. And if he can rein that in a little bit and keep the contact levels he's making, because he's at the top of the league in average exit velocity and hard hit percentage. The only thing that might lead me to take Miranda at this point in the draft is if I haven't landed a third baseman yet. Because third baseman is more of a premium position than outfield, and they both share first base. But other than that, I think Vaughn is possibly on the verge of stardom at this point.
We're going to have our first disagreement because I am all in on Jose Miranda. And finally, it took us 40 minutes in, but we finally have a disagreement here. I'm in for Jose Miranda, and here's why. Looking into his numbers, first, you already mentioned the third base eligibility, which I really like, but he had a 251 in the first half, 280 in the second half. In June and July, hit over 300. And after May, He never had a month below 259 batting average. He's a great contact hitter, and he showed that in the minor leagues, and also had a 30 home run season before he was called up to the big league. So he has power that he's capable of showing with 30 home run plus power potential. But this is a stat that I want to give the Welsh credit for because he's the one who brought it to my attention. So 0-2 counts are the hardest counts to hit in baseball, obviously, because one more strike, you're obviously out here. He was a 241 hitter on 0-2 counts last season, which is absolutely insane. And if you compare that to Mookie Betts, who hit 198 in 0-2 counts last year, it's a huge difference compared to Mookie Betts, a 1-0 count, 311 with 16 home runs, and then with an 0-1 count, 218 with 15 home runs. Jose Miranda in those same counts hit 313 with 9 home runs and a 1-0 count, and 242 with 4 home runs and an 0-1 count. He had an under 20% K rate in his rookie season, which to have an under 20% strikeout rate in your first year in baseball alone is an accomplishment. And then Steamer projects him for 269 batting average and 20 home runs. Those projected stats actually have him tied for the third best average among third basemen with 20 or more home runs, according to Steamer. I think he's also going to be the best overall Twins hitter the entire season in terms of what he gives you. I think he's going to be better than Correa. He's going to be better than Buxton because Buxton's not going to stay healthy. I think at the end of the year, you're going to look and he's going to be the one that's accumulated the most stats, played in the most games, and is going to be the one you're most happy you drafted. So for me, I'm team Jose Miranda this season. I think he's going to be even better.
Did you say that was the third highest projected average for third baseman with 20 or more home runs?
According to Steamer, this was about a month ago when this was, yeah. So unless something changed, yeah.
I'm wondering who they have below him between Manny. I guess they have Joe Ram below him for average.
I can pull it up as we talk here. I'll double check what.
You know what, like the vibes I get from Miranda, and that's very good to do your fantasy analysis based on vibes. It's like a Carlos Correa type to stay within the organization, where I think he'll wind up being a very good hitter, but maybe not the best fantasy asset.
That's fair. I mean, I think there's definitely you can tell there's some players that are better baseball players in fantasy. I just love his skill set to where I think it's going to really play well this year. Personally, but you can't go wrong with either of these two guys.
What the heck? I thought we all agreed to agree on everything, guys.
Yeah, that's the first one. Yeah.
It took us 40 minutes, so we just had to get the listeners something a little different here. I had to throw a curveball for you guys here. We have another cage match. Actually, no, before we get to the next cage match, we'll do a simpler one. Jorge Polanco at pick 153 versus Jonathan India at pick 179. Sam, which of these two is your preference?
I'll find my sheet here, but I do remember it was definitely Polanco. Yeah, here you go. Yeah, same thing. I was actually surprised. I know John India had a rough season last year due to injuries and whatnot, but he still plays in Great American Small Park, which should help out a little bit. But he was bottom 3% of the league in exit velocity and bottom 5% of the league in hard hit percentage. That is not going to help you drive the ball out of even the smallest park in the league, which it is. But Jorge Polanco is only, 1 year away from hitting 33 home runs and stealing 11 bases? So he had a bit of a down season last year, but if he can bounce back to anywhere near where he was in 2021, this guy can turn a huge profit at the draft table.
Yeah, he's a main part of the Twins lineup, a 2010 threat for sure, and you're getting him at that pick. I can see the value there. Now, Schwebzy, Jonathan India, I think we're torn. Was his rookie season a mirage, or was it he was injured last year and we didn't see the full Jonathan India? Do you side with the Polanco argument, or do you think India bounces back here?
Jonathan India makes me sad because that was one of my biggest wins at the end of 2021, because as soon as he got that leadoff spot, like Jordan and I called it out, and it was just he had a fantastic season, and he did none of that this year. And there was a very clear thing that happened to cause it. Pitchers started throwing him in the zone a lot more. He is a patient player. And he might be taking a page out of the Kevin Biggio book and being patient to a fault. He has a very low meatball percentage. He's not swinging at pitches right down the middle. He doesn't have a high swing percentage, period. And it appears that it's putting him into bad counts, bad situations, and putting him on the defense more than the offense. He's not putting the same swings on the ball that he was in his rookie year. And it's leading to these relatively pathetic exit velocities that are way higher than I could ever achieve. Yeah, I just got to put that in context. I don't want to just trash the guy. He's still one of the best baseball players in the world. But yeah, I'm out on India, and I don't particularly like Polanco. Sam, you mentioned that big home run year 2 years ago. I think that was more a product of the league environment than Polanco himself. But a strain, like I think he's like a 20 home run guy that just, super bounce ball helped him get up to 30. But a weird thing about him is that this past year, he suddenly put up a 14.4% walk rate. And that was never his game. He's a veteran. He's been around for a while. He'd never been above 8.5% before. And suddenly he spiked his walk rate up to 14%. I don't even know what to make of it because it's such a drastic change. I don't know if that's something we can expect to regress in like a lot, or if he could be a low-key good OBP league asset. But given that we've seen spikes in his performances before that have kind of, come back to earth, I'm not betting on him, but I do think he's a safe pick, but I guess with the chance to do something wild or unique every year for him, maybe that's just his thing. This year I'm going to hit 30 home runs. This year I'm going to walk 15% of the time, whatever. I'm just going to do something different every year.
A little bit like Kettle Marte in that respect. And actually, to drive home what you said about the walks, he set a career high last year with 64 walks in 104 games. His previous high was just 60, and it took him 153 games for that.
Yeah, it's weird. It's so weird.
He set a career low for batting average last year by almost 30 points.
You guys sold me on Jorge. I was kind of thinking I might lean a little more India here, but I think I'm with you guys on the Jorge Polanco. I think he's less injury prone at this point. Just I think safer on that front. He's gonna give you a good amount of counting stats. He's gonna hit up in the Twins lineup, and feels like the safer play here. By the way, in terms of going back to the Jose Miranda, the third basemen that have a higher batting average that are projected to hit 20 or more home runs are Rafael Devers and Austin Riley. And then he's tied with Nolan Arenado for a 269 batting average.
What about Machado?
Machado's lower.
Machado is a 268 projected batting average. And Jose Ramirez is a 262 projected batting average.
Okay.
So that's at least according to Steamer. So I think it's a very appealing part for his profile. Let's not talk about a Twins player in this next one. Let's go to our next cage match. And this one is a name that's either causes you a lot of pain or a lot of joy for what he did just a few years ago. Outfielder Cody Bellinger going at pick 176. Oscar Gonzalez going around 176.3. Lars Nootbaar going at 177.8. The shirtless video of him now viral and everybody's seen it at this point. And Brandon Nimmo going at 179. So all these guys going about 3 picks on average apart from each other, all different types of skill sets. I'm going to go to you first here, Schwebzy. Out of this group of 4, is there one you're like, this is my guy, I got to get him?
I actually have 2 guys here. This one hurts me. Like choosing between Nootbaar and Nimmo is like asking me to choose a favorite child. So this this hurts me really. I'm gonna start from the bottom and go up here. I'm not an Oscar Gonzalez fan. Circling back to what I said before, plate discipline is absolutely terrible. And maybe he's one of those guys like a Garcia or a earlier career Javi Baez, where he can get away with the terrible plate discipline and still impact the ball really well. But he didn't actually do that last year. So I'm out on Oscar Gonzalez. One thing that I'll give him credit for is that even with how much he chases, he hit over 275 against all the major pitch types: fastballs, breakers, off speed. And I would expect someone who chases that much to struggle against off speed pitches, but he's a bad ball hitter, I guess. If you look at the chart of all of his hits all season long, like where they were in the strike zone, they're all over the place. He can hit the ball anywhere, really. Just I don't know if he can hit it hard enough anywhere consistently to be really good. Bellinger, I'm going to say something that might be controversial. I think he has a good floor because we all know how much he's regressed. We all know he's not what he used to be. But if he plays a full season, and he should because of his defense, he's going to approach 20 home runs and 15 stolen bases, which are bankable fantasy stats in deep leagues. And he's probably going to get to 150 plus runs in RBI. With that alone makes him good. It doesn't matter if he might hit 215 because his shoulder messed up his swing. So I like Bellinger. He's not my choice here, but I absolutely like him if you're trying to, accumulate home runs and stolen bases in your outfield later in a draft.
Mm-hmm.
As for Nimmo and Nootbaar, I always say that I think Nimmo has like one absolutely bonkers year in the tank at some point, like 2000 Darren Erstad, where he just put up like 8 WAR out of nowhere. I think Nimmo has that in him. But I'm not going to try to predict what year that's going to be, because he has all the tools to be great in fantasy, but that's just not his game. He's still great for OBP. He'll hit you 15 or so home runs. He won't steal bases, even though he's fast, because he runs like a baby giraffe. A fast baby giraffe, but a baby giraffe nonetheless. But yeah, I love Nimmo, but I have to go Newt here, because God, what Nootbaar did in the second half of last year, I mean, it's like already a thing of legend in like the fantasy community, because all we can talk about is like how incredible his plate discipline was in the second half. And Scott Chu has gone on and on about how good his contact was as the year has gone along. And he's got every tool that Nimmo has, except he's actually shown that he can turn it into stats a little bit better so far. So yeah, as much as it pains me to choose Newt over Nimmo, that's my pick here.
All right. I like it. I think Nootbaar is definitely going to be a very popular name as we continue to go into draft season here. Seems like he's making a lot of strides in the offseason. Sam, how are you going to order these 4 outfielders?
I am also on Team Nootbaar when it comes down to it. I do think that when it comes to Bellinger, this is the best year to finally get some value out of him, because I don't think anybody is jumping on, hey, he's going to return to MVP form anytime soon. But Chris is right. There's a good chance that you're going to get close to 20 home runs. You're going to get middle teens of stolen bases. And maybe he hits a little better than 210. Maybe he hits 225. And it's not that unpalatable in a year where a lot of people are hitting 250 at best. I'm also not a big fan of Oscar Gonzalez. I just don't see what's great there compared to these couple of guys. And this is, again, compared to Nimmo has a track record at this point. Nimmo is an excellent on-base guy. For the Mets, he should score 100 runs if he's sitting up in the leadoff position again. He's not going to give you a ton of power. He's not going to give you a ton of RBI because of the batting position, and he doesn't really steal bases. But Bellinger's the only one here that really steals bases, and Nootbaar has the speed, and he did steal 4 in less than 250 at-bats last year, which would prorate to about 12 in a full season. So it's not like he's not going to help in that category. His patience is amazing. He hits the ball hard. He barrels up the ball well. And he's just got a really fun name, and nobody would believe that he's Japanese.
Wait, who's
Japanese? Playing for Team Japan in the WBC.
Yeah, he's playing.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Yep.
I would have never guessed. That's some bar trivia right there. But
everybody's favorite Viking is actually Chinese.
I have to say, though, I'm reading the comments. My guy, Money 666. Oscar has that dog in him. He does.
You can't quantify that.
I don't know. I saw there was an X-ray of his chest, and I saw there was a dog in there. I think he's the other 3 names stick out to you, but I think he's going to quietly be the best of the bunch here. I think he's going to have a very good season that no one's going to talk about. Last year, 296 batting average, 11 homers, 39 RBIs, a sub 20% strikeout rate, and that's actually been very normal for him, as he's basically since 2017 has had a sub 25% strikeout rate at every single level of the minors he's been at. And a lot of times it's closer to under 20 than it is over 20. He also, maybe the walk rate isn't going to be great, but he makes a lot of hard contact. And to be honest with you guys, he makes, besides the hard contact, I mean, he's also going to be a middle part of this very much improving Guardians lineup. A 40% hard hit rate, 113 max EV. He's one of those guys, like maybe he does swing outside the zone on some bad pitches and you could be worried about his plate discipline. But there's some certain players that he's not Vlad Guerrero, but there's certain guys that can get away with it more than others just with how much they can make contact consistently. And he seems like he's one of those guys to me. He had some really torrid stretches last year where he homered in multiple games in a row twice last year. I think he's the most slept on guy in this group. And that's why I think I'll draft the most of him, is because I think in 2 weeks from now, Lars Nootbaar is going to be severely ahead of him. just because, like what you guys were saying, I think everybody's kind of hyping him up now, and I think he's the more popular name from this group. But I think all are great players too. I do want to really quickly do a catcher battle while my dog is, I had to grab his pillow from him really fast. William versus Wilson Contreras. Schwebzy, kick it off for us.
So I think it's a toss-up, which makes this even more funny for me. But I would go William here because I think there's a bit more bat in William Contreras than Wilson, and he's 5 years younger, which puts him in a better spot on the aging curve. You know, every now and then you get a catcher who ages really well, but that's really not common. And which one of these guys is better, like on the season, like at the season end player rater or whatever? It likely just comes down to which one gets to DH more. And it's hard to really parse that right now. I would argue that William Contreras is more likely to DH than Wilson, just because Wilson has Nolan Gorman on the bench, whereas the best hitter on the Brewers bench is Keston Hiura, Brousseau. I don't know. It's not Brian Anderson. Maybe it's not the best bench. I think William Contreras is a better bat than all of them. So I feel like it's more likely for him to get off day DH days there. But also the Cardinals love their respected veteran catchers. So maybe, Wilson just gets DH days there, on the strength of him just being really well liked. I don't know. I think could go either way.
You are getting William at a 20 pick discount from Wilson. So I think that could sway a lot of people being okay
William,
with.
then. Give me William.
Yeah, I think that's the big difference here. That 20 ADP difference here. Sam, is that the same with you as well? Just the fact that the ADP is 20 picks apart, that you'd rather wait?
Yeah, I agree that William might also get more DH time because he's not as good of a defensive catcher as Wilson is. So they might just want to get him out from behind the plate more. But yeah, those 20-some picks, that's a big deal at that point in the draft. I like to wait on catcher just about as long as I can because I think most of them are overdrafted. So I will absolutely wait the extra 2 rounds to get the younger brother.
All right. Well, I think we're all simpatico on that one. Not too many debates here. You know what? That could be a good thing because when everybody has these problems, we're pretty definitive on where we lie on these ADP situations. So a lot of helping out here, actually, at the end of the day.
I want to fend Nick off and use every minute of our time. Can we do a lightning round with Franco versus Tim Anderson?
Why not? Yeah, Wander Franco versus Tim Anderson. And the ADPs between the two. Tim Anderson is going at, let me change my position here. Tim Anderson is, I think, the 11th shortstop off the board. No, 12th shortstop off the board, pick 86. Wander is the 10th at pick 83. Where do you guys think, Sam, where would you rather go here?
I'm going to take the guy who has hit over 300 for 4 straight seasons. Even with Jose Abreu out of town, I love Tim Anderson.
Schwebzy?
I thought I might cause some division here. I'm also a Tim Anderson guy. Honestly, I think this is kind of like the Pam from The Office thing, where it's like this is the same picture because I think they're basically the same player. I wonder about Wander Franco's upside. I think Wander Franco's upside might just be Tim Anderson with a little bit more average, maybe. So yeah, I'm Tim Anderson here because I think the steals that Anderson's going to pile up are more impactful than the slight edge that Wander might have in batting average.
Yeah, Wander had hamstring issues last year too, so I could see him holding back on the running this year a lot.
Yeah, Wander Franco could be anybody. He could even be Tim Anderson.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I was thinking in my head when you were saying that. Yeah, I think I think he's played 153 career games, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to double check that, but his stats is basically a full season. They're not that impressive.
Actually, I have his 153 line right here. Is 282 average, 99 runs scored, 13 dingers, 72 ribbies, and 10 stolen bases. That does not really move the needle for me.
Nope. So I'm with you guys, Tim Anderson. Last one real quick. Jazz versus Albies, Ozzie Albies and Jazz Chisholm here, and they're both second basemen, so I'll change it here. Ozzie Albies is going as the 4th second baseman at pick 48. Jazz Chisholm is the 3rd second baseman at pick 41. Both can have volatility in their profiles. I'm team Jazz for life this year. Schwebzy, what are you?
Albies is a weird one. Albies feels like a different player every year. I would go Jazz here for the upside. I think they're both going to be very good. I think if they both played a full season, Jazz would be better. And the only major difference is Jazz's health.
Yeah, with you.
Yeah,
Sam, wrap us up
it's
here.
not even just a different player. He's a worse player every year. 4 consecutive years where his average has declined. 295, 271, 259, and just 247 last year. So I am Jazz all day, every day. I love Jazz Chisholm.
Play that sweet jazz music as we get on out of here. Nick, we are ready. We are through all our ADP hitter debates.
All right. Okay. Congratulations, guys. You did it. I'm so proud of all of you. No more debates, all just nice and kind to each other.
It was crazy.
And guess what? No cursing. Even
I'd
better.
have cursed if somebody took Albies.
I'll do it now.
No, I don't want you to. I'm proud of you for this. Don't take that away. But no, really, Dave, Sam, Chris, sorry, Schwebs. Thank you all so much for being a part of PitchCon once again. Fantastic panel. I needed this help, so thank you for doing it just for me, really. But yeah, have a wonderful Friday. Thanks so much for helping out today.
Nick, thank you for all that you're doing. I can't even speak. I'm just happy for the cause and so happy that you let me be a part of this. And this was a fun debate. So thanks for having us. And this was a blast.
Absolutely. See you guys.
See you. Have a
Bye,
good
friends.
weekend.
See ya.